Okay. You guys can sit down.
Okay.
Okay, so today, thank you so much everyone for being here. Today I'm excited to have the two winners of the 2025 Pitch Elk Grove. Woo! And so we have here Rich with HuMOLYTE, and then Dr. Misra with EnlitenAI. What's very unique about having both of them here is that one of them, they're both solving problems in healthcare, but one of them is a product that you can touch, and then the other one is a product, it's an AI product that helps. We'll learn more about you. Okay, so we'll get started. And then the way it'll work is I'll ask some of the questions, and then afterwards we'll open to your questions. So let's start from the beginning. Dr. Misra, tell us about.
Call me Himanshu.
Himanshu,
Yeah.
okay. Dr. Himanshu, period. I don't want to let go of that doctor. So tell us kind of the origin story of your product. How did it begin, and what problem are you solving?
Sure. So our journey with EnlitenAI started about 5 years ago, and our product is a decision support system to enable neurologists and epileptologists to improve their treatment, titration decisions, personalization of how to treat and when to treat in the area of epilepsy and seizure management. And the story started because my son had epilepsy, and I've seen 23 years of drug-resistant epilepsy in my own family. We lost our son 5 years ago. So this is essentially learnings of what we saw as a caregiver and what I saw my son experience in his own life, but we wanted to leverage my technical skills in an area that was so close to us. So this is how EnlitenAI began, with an objective to improve the quality of treatment, quality of life of patients dealing with epilepsy and seizures. Yeah.
Thank you for that. I'm sorry for your loss. How do you, as you're working, as you're putting this together, how do you balance the emotional piece of it with the demands of creating a startup?
Yeah, so it's they go hand in hand. So first of all, I think the personal story and the pain and the memories associated with it make me stronger. Of course, it also keeps me grounded in the sense that we're not solving a fictitious problem, we're solving a problem that we know exists, and which is actually an unmet need in the market. So from that perspective, we are grounded, we know what we are doing, it's real, and it could impact millions of others. But at the same time, the passion and the energy that we get out of it is immense. So as you know, a startup dies 1,000 deaths. You have lots of ups and downs, but this is what keeps us going. In the sense that we know that we are on the right track. For whatever reason, if there are challenges in the ecosystem or in the market, we take a step back, but come back because with the resolution is there to make it happen.
How about you, Rich?
So the company was actually started by Dr. Saurabh Khare, he's a nephrologist, and a nephrologist is a kidney doctor. And what he did was he started out creating a sports drink, and what he was trying to do was solve cramps. And it's actually a really exceptional sports drink. In fact, we had it adopted by the Sacramento Republic, and last year they had their sports director said they didn't have to pull any players because of cramping. But what had happened was he had some chemotherapy patients. So if you're going through chemotherapy, it actually dehydrates you because of the vomiting and the diarrhea that occurs from chemotherapy. And he had a couple patients that were trying to use his drinks called Magnac in order to hydrate, and it didn't work because it didn't solve for the diarrhea and vomiting. So his wife is actually they're all very smart people, is also a PhD, and she's doing research into Actually, she has her own startup called Metropios, and they're basically creating therapies based on human milk proteins. And so she suggested adding an ingredient called HMO, which stands for human milk oligosaccharides, which is a key ingredient in infant formula. And the reason she said that is there's studies at UC Davis that actually shows that this ingredient has a protective quality on the digestive system. And so he basically mixed a sports drink with HuMOLYTE, and that's actually what I tell people. Our project essentially is a mixture of infant formula and a sports drink. But he's got a couple patents on it, and we just finished 32-person study, and it hasn't come out yet, but it's going through peer review. But it's actually been shown to actually decrease mucositis. So it's a painful mouth sores that occur so it's actually done more than we expected. It's actually, mucositis, these painful mouth sores that occur from chemotherapy. And in fact, there's really no good solution. There's like one solution now, and it's an IV, and costs like $10,000 per application, and it's only used for head and neck cancers. So it's actually pretty impressive that, I'm not a clinician, and I always tell people the last time I had biology was in 10th grade. But I'm really glad to be part of this journey here. So that's how it all started. So.
Oh, okay, perfect. But you're doing a great job using the terminology and really understanding.
Oh, I can fake it. Fake it till you make it.
Okay, perfect. And so, and what are some things as you are doing these studies? What are some things that you didn't expect that you have found out?
It's expensive. I think I spent the first few years trying to raise money to have the studies done here in the United States. And for example, Dr. Craig's part of Sutter, and so he thought we could do it through a physician-led study at Sutter, which would have cost us $100,000. But when they found that he had his own company, it went from $100,000 to $1 million. And no one, if you really think about it, if you're trying to pitch to investors, you're trying to get investment money to show it's an investment money just for a study, which is a gamble. And so I wasn't getting very far. And if I could tell myself a couple years, instead of doing a study here in the United States, we could do it so much more affordably. Like we actually did our study in India, and instead of, it cost us $40,000. So it's a lot more, it's much more affordable. It's just as valid. It has to go through the Indian equivalent of the FDA. And we can present it to some of the companies that are interested because they are multinational companies. And if we wanted to do a study in the United States, then it makes de-risk it because they can see, oh, it worked in India, so it should work in the United States as well. So
do you want to share? I love the story about how you were looking in Facebook for people to.
Oh yeah.
It was just so hard. You didn't know it was.
Oh yeah. So we were being naive. We thought, well, I could try to do the study. I could do a 30-patient study. I could use my social media magic to get people to. I can get anybody. I would go to. I would actually join a bunch of Facebook cancer support groups. There's chemotherapy support group, and then we got a study approved to be done here. It had to go through an IRB. And I would post it, we're looking for patients. And as soon as I put something in there, I get a response, hey, try my cannabis solution or try my herbal. So there's all this other noise that interferes with it. And I just realized why it's so expensive to do it here. You can't do it like this. So that's when we had to retool. Okay, let's get some more money and let's do it in India. And it's a dream doing it because we work with 3 hospitals in India. Our doctor met with it's called a CRB or CRO, and so it's like Clinical Research Organization, CRO. And every week we're interviewing candidates, and they had all the data for us. It was actually kind of good. In fact, if you are a medical startup and you have to do a study, I almost recommend getting enough money to have it done offshore somewhere. And that way, when, in fact, that way when you actually try to, do the study here, you can show that, it was effective. In fact, do you know Jessie Alexander Becker? She had she has a device, it's a medical device that helps bleeding after a pregnancy. And everything changed for her. Her entire trajectory changed after she had her study in the Philippines. And once that was done, and then she could show people here that they had it, then she got a lot of investment money. So that's kind of where we're at right now. We're hoping the study was written up, it's going through peer review, and now we're hoping to, after the study, then we're hoping this whole world will open up to us.
Yeah,
So,
sure.
fingers crossed.
Yes, we will all be possible.
Congratulations.
Yes, yes. How does your product differ, right, from whenever you're trying to see how people are using it?
So, there are a lot of similarities. So we also went through the same process. Any solution, whether it's software or hardware or a combination, needs to go through a validation process. You need to have sufficient data to show efficacy and a lot of other factors, depending on the type of solution you have. So we also have done clinical studies. We've done 2 pilots, both of them in the Sacramento area, which was amazing because Elk Grove competition actually gave us the visibility in this area, and we were able to get traction and credibility and connections in the space. And Sacramento will be our launch pad for our product as we commercialize it. But coming back to your point, yes, we also went through the process of getting a CRO, getting an IRB done, and then of course a protocol document and so on and so forth, so you can actually contain the scope of the study and also have certain, I would say, measurable endpoints. But getting a patient onboarded, identification is a challenge. It's not easy. Some of the biggest challenges is getting patients who could qualify and who are willing to participate in a study, no matter how long or how easy or difficult it is. So yes, we go through the process of validations, make sure that the patients see value in the product, because our product, as yours, we sell to the physicians because we have a B2B model, the neurology centers. They advocate the use of our product to the patients. The patients are consumers of our product. So they need to adopt and see the value, and the stickiness should be there so that the neurologists and the physicians will continue to advocate the use of our solution. And that cycle is very important, and yes, we went through the same. So very, very similar, but we went through similar challenges as well.
And I saw that you started with epilepsy, but I don't know if you already have or starting to expand into anxiety. Could you share a little bit
Yeah,
about?
that's a good point. So yes and no. So one thing is that I was telling one of my colleagues over here that patients with epilepsy or seizures, they're dealing with a lot of comorbidities. The comorbidities which are very common with seizures are anxiety, depression, and behavioral dysregulation. For example, patients with autism spectrum, 30% of them also have seizures. So, yes, our product is focused on patients with epilepsy, dealing with solutions to manage seizures, but also understand the complex interactions between seizures and other comorbidities like depression, anxiety, and so on. It could be because of the underlying ailment or disorder, but it could also be induced because of the medications, the anti-seizure medications you're taking. And that relationship is complex, not known, not well understood, very patient specific. To your point, in future, our product is designed to be scalable, so that we can address other neurobehavioral disorders as we move ahead, as we get more money. But we have, as a startup, we have to be focused. We want to make sure that we establish ourselves in an area, and epilepsy is not a small area. It's a very significant market size and one of the least well understood neurological conditions. So yes, this in itself is big, but we have the ability to scale out in future. Could be through partnerships, could be through acquisitions. We keep it open.
So it was a natural progression.
Yes,
thinking
yes.
of it. Does your product have anything that?
Actually, interesting enough, it's the patent for it is for digestive issues. So theoretically, right now we're focused on chemotherapy, but it could also be used for other digestive issues. We just haven't tried it. Occasionally I get someone that says I have some digestive order, and I don't know, but I can send you some product and you can test it.
Mm-hmm.
So, but in theory, it protects the digestive system, so it should work on other ailments, but we haven't really tested it out. And I think this goes with, working with a lot of different startups, like, and this is the thing is, when I had to start an app company, and when initially, we could make any kind of app, we could do anything. And then we actually got success when I had a customer that we focus on making wellness apps for first responders, and that's where we did really well. And I tell people, like, if a startup, if you try to do everything, then you basically, if you market to everybody, you market to no one. But if you are laser focused on one specific thing, then you'll be more successful. And I think that's what I've seen. If they, I was working, there was a startup, and they were like, I was mentoring a startup, and they were looking at, their product could actually be used for anything, but they're going to focus on helping foster children with their health records, and that's a very narrow, specific thing. But it could theoretically be used for everything. But if they could just focus on one thing, get money from it, it could fund other verticals. So, if you focus on one thing, get success. More importantly, get money, start generating revenue. Then you can start looking at other things.
And when it comes down to looking for money, when is that point that you're like, okay, now I'm ready? Like from the beginning, you'll need money probably because you're going into healthcare, and that just naturally is a lot of money. But when is that point as you start your business that you say, now it's the time?
As a founder is always looking for money. It's they say that you're continuously looking for money. Even after you've raised a seed round, you're still looking for the next Series A and so on. And of course that changes. I mean, it depends on certain startups. They may have enough money and they don't need to dilute themselves by bringing third-party investors and so on. But having said that, in the space that we are in, that I am in, we require some money to be able to scale. And clinical studies are expensive.
Oh, yeah.
We spent $500,000 in getting a clinical study done, and that was done in US with a small number of patients. But it just is expensive, and from your experience, I wish I could have done what you had done. And but having said that, yes, it really depends on your strategic plan, and the team, the leadership team needs to understand what their strategic objectives are, focused, but then you need to scale and establish credibility. And what are those core value points that you need to be able to demonstrate so that you can raise the next round. We don't want to raise unnecessarily too much money, but it should be the right amount of money so that we can get to the next milestone, which will add value to the company. And then if you need to scale out, and therefore for that purpose you need more people, more resources, and more access to, a better access to the market, then you need to raise money. So it's a decision that everyone would take on a case-by-case basis. But to your point, it's important to build, it takes time, talking to investors, closing things, and understanding their decision-making cycle. And last year has been tough. Last couple of years have been tough for healthcare. And even the investors, in my opinion, have had a tough time raising money for their own funds so that they can fund startups like ours. So what really helped us during that process is startups continued to build products given the constraints that they had, but they have, in that process, they've evolved with on a shoestring budget. But at the same time, the products have evolved to a point where now their valuations would be higher, and they have significantly de-risked the market. So I believe as things start turning around in the market and we hear that cautious optimism, I believe it is good time for some of the startups who have actually braved through tough times in the last couple of years, but build product and products to a point where the value is seen and evident and market has been de-risked, that it's a good time for us. So fingers crossed, but I think it's you need time for investors to just take a decision as well.
So I think medical and healthcare startups are, like my last company was software related, and so we didn't really have to worry about, we weren't making any claims, so we just went to market and people bought, and it was, it was kind of your classic model. And with healthcare, it's so different because you have to have FDA approval to make any kind of claims to be. And actually, I really saw that when I was trying to recruit people, because as soon as I was trying to get people to do our market, I got 20 people saying I have this other thing for chemo or for cancer. So you have to show them the data, and it's a challenge. And there's a couple of medical, Brad Niles, he spends more like 80% of his time raising money. And Ashita, who runs Matriculous, she spends most of the time trying to raise money. And so it's kind of unfortunate. They spend more time trying to raise funds and less time in the lab, where they should be. So it is definitely a challenge, and I know with this last change in administration, funding the sciences has actually been, it's almost like the stick that came off, and it's been more challenging as of the last year especially. So it'd be interesting to see, we ourselves, I think we got to a point where we showed the efficacy, and now we're hoping just to get a food company like Nestle or Danone that, they see the data to either look at acquisition or licensing, because they actually have the infrastructure and the funds to support it, where right now we're just a two-person startup effectively. So it is a challenge, and you've got a long road too. We're just looking for acquisition at this point.
But I to your point, I think that some adjustments need to be made. If the market conditions are tough, so what we also did, we made a conscious decision to say that, in our regulatory, our product is also regulated through FDA. So we adopted a phased approach for regulatory compliance. And so what we said was that we will start off by having a product, version 1, ready, that is a class 1 software as a medical device, which means that we can register our product as long as our claims are not prescriptive in nature, but is more about displaying information and insights and trends, so the physician can decide, but we don't bias their decision either way. So that's a class 1, broadly speaking. So with that said, our approach of product launch changed so that we could have a product, and luckily last month, or I would say first week of January, we registered our product, and now in 2 months we are ready to commercialize our product platform. So that will help us earn money as we get traction in the market, and of course we raise money as well. But it gives us the ability to say, hey, we have a product in the market, patients are using it, and then we go in for the second version of our release of our product, where we have more claims and, I would say, features that would be construed as being prescriptive in nature, and therefore puts us in the class 2. But by that time we will have enough market hold and some sort of revenue, and helps us. So what I'm saying is, some adjustments are needed, and that's where teams come together, advisors help us a lot, and they say this is what we would recommend, and we make a decision case to case.
I'm seeing a couple startups, and one is they, instead of going to, they're actually, they're actually looking at the cosmetic side of it, because there's less regulatory on it, or they'll look into veterinary medicine, there's less regulations. So I see some other interesting ways how they could get, they're gonna go through commercializations using different areas that have less regulations, and then hopefully they will raise enough funds to go into like the more of the substantive human claims.
So speaking about raising money, one way is going into competitions, right? And so, what did you do? What competitions have you been prior to the Pitch Elk Grove last year, if any?
Well, for me, this was the only competition I attended from that perspective. We've gone through accelerator programs, and they were different in nature. They were not. It was essentially you compete to get admitted, and then once you're in there, through the through the accelerator programs that we've gone through, Innosphere, we've gone through LifeX, Jumpstart, IIT startups, NorCal, AngelCon, most recently, and Epilepsy Foundation. So each of those startups helped us get some information about regulatory, about epilepsy, about commercialization models, and a lot of other things. So it helped. But to your specific comment about competitions, this was actually for me the first competition, the Elk Grove competition, and I'm very grateful to the Elk Grove committee, economic department, for their vision and their stewardship in making this thing happen, because it helped me. We came out of semi-stealth mode, and this timing worked well for us, and this last year, this competition was the first one for us. We participated, met with people. In fact, in this very room, as we were preparing for the final page, we had, Laura Good and Startup Sac, they were actually kind of helping us fine-tune our pitch and messaging, but each of the founders had feedback for each other, and that was very useful. And I think it was the next week, the following week, we had a pitch, and everyone's pitch was transformed. So it helped us improve our pitching, our pitch content, but also build this ecosystem of players that we connected with. I've got like 4 neurology centers in Sacramento and the greater Sacramento area that are going to be our early customers in the next 3 to 4 months, which gives us a huge catchment area. As I said, our objective is to commercialize our product, to begin with Sacramento as a launch pad. So I think there are a lot of other benefits of this event and getting us together, and for that I'm very grateful for the timing as well as to the Elk Grove committee.
So this is the 3rd time I applied. I went to the Pitch Elk Grove contest, and the first year, we got thanks for applying, that's about it. We got your, the second year we made it to the semifinals, and we didn't get farther. And I have actually been in an accelerator, and I guess maybe I was a little arrogant, and I was thinking, oh my God, I need to change it up. So I took a little bit of humble pie, and Startup Sac actually had a 4-week workshop where we had to go through, basically it was a 4-week pitch workshop, and then you got feedback from actual investors. And it was kind of good to get their feedback, because sometimes you're in your own mind, but if you see it from their standpoint, you're like, oh, okay. And so that really helped out. I did compete in the Startup World Cup. We made runner-up for our region, so we didn't get anything. It was just kind of like a participation trophy. And but going through this process really forced you to look at your presentation, and it's interesting because I'm working with Dr. Curate. He's a clinician, and his original pitch deck was it's like a textbook. It's a lot of text, and so I had to dumb it down so that I could understand it. Just going through this process, and I think I had probably 12 different versions before I finally went to Elk Grove, and I practiced so often coming up, because I was actually thrilled to make it to the finalists this year. And when I saw some of the competitors, and there was one, it was Stealth Recruiting or something, and they made $5 million in revenue the first year. And I was they're the winner. I'm just happy to be. It's like making the Olympics and just hanging out at the Olympic Village, So I'm glad to be there. And actually we did win, but I just think that the process of doing this just made us so much better. And also, to your point, working with, we were here in this room, and then we were practicing, and as a group, we were actually helping each other out.
Exactly.
And I actually really applaud Sarah and their team that it's really been, I've worked with a lot of the other economic centers, and you guys are the best. Don't tell Roosevelt I said that.
We'll delete that.
But you guys are the best. I mean, I really like what you've done, and I mean, I've seen it. Like, you guys are transformative for the startups, and hopefully you guys here at Sarah. But they really are a force here, force for good, so to speak. And I wish we had that in Folsom. So, but just the act of doing that really has made us, I think, better in just looking at a lot of different things.
I love what you said about going to different, what did you call
Accelerators?
it? Yes.
Yeah.
Right, because I think sometimes some people may think, okay, one is enough, right? I go to one, I'm done. But they're all a little bit different, and it
Yes.
sounds like you took a lot.
And yes, that also, they're all a bit different in their own focus areas, but also at various stages of evolution, I felt that, I don't know anything about regulatory. And then the next thing we don't know anything about, the market access for like epilepsy and so on. Actually another thing, as we participated with the Epilepsy Foundation Accelerator Program, we were able to connect with the ecosystem of device vendors and so on, other things in the epilepsy space, because those are partners. It's not so there is value in at every stage. So today, I feel I've had enough of accelerators. Because what happens is after a while you say, no, I don't need yet another person to come in and mentor us and say, this is what you got to do. And we know the problem, we know the solution, and so on. But sometimes you get tempted to go for that because there are other values, propositions to that. Maybe they introduce you to a new hospital system network. So, don't say no, but also don't sign up recklessly, because, you'll end up being a student all your life.
Yes.
So,
Rich, you were saying how, you took this course and, learned how to pitch better, but what did you learn about your company? What are some aha moments that you had as you were doing this?
You have to, you got to sell you got to sell the benefit. Like, I think when I initially looked at the deck that the doctor put together, he had all the science stuff in there, and all his charts. And I think I started out with my presentation by showing my friend that just passed away from cancer. And then I talked about the mucositis, the diarrhea, vomiting, and that was kind of hindering it. So I think people, when I give the presentation, I had a lot of people come to me afterwards and said, "Oh, my aunt had cancer," or whatever had cancer. And myself personally, I think just in the last year, 2 family members died of cancer. So for me, it's personal, and it's why I'm, the 10th grade biology guy. I feel like at least if this, hopefully this does well, then this will be, my contribution to humanity. Not making it, but helping it get to market.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm hoping for, that they could help people, if this could help some people, then, and I think this is what you're doing. If you're seeing it from your personal standpoint. If we could help some people from it, then it's definitely worth it. So I think I think there's so many people that get wrapped up in the science and the technology, but when I looked at it, it's like, what we're trying to do is stop the diarrhea, the vomiting, and mucositis. But that's you focused on the benefit, and not the science is just sort of it's like the background, the footnotes is what the science is.
What about you? Was there anything that you learned as you were preparing for the pitch?
Yeah, what we learned was that, like, depending on the stakeholder we are talking to, that pitch and that articulation has to be appropriate for that. That's the reason, as you are fundraising every day, continuously, a pitch deck also is changing every day, and it's evolving. You have different versions of your pitches. In our situation, it would be aimed at the neurologists, and there a little bit of the science is important, otherwise you lose credibility. So, but of course then they want to understand the data side of it. Then you talk to the investors, then it has to be toned down to a point where there's business. There's enough differentiation in the product for them to feel comfortable that you have something which is defensible, and some intellectual property exists for them to feel comfortable investing in you. So it's a different type of pitch. So we, and then of course, as our roadmap evolves also, for example, right now, we feel pretty comfortable in where our product market fit is. So we know there's a niche, there's an unmet need, and we fit that need very well. Is the market ready for it? How do we establish proof points to show that the market is willing to accept and pay for that? And that is the commercialization aspect. So my focus in the next 3 to 6 months has moved away from so much of the technology aspect to the commercialization aspect. And then as we get into that, then the next challenge, in my opinion, would be scale. I mean, sure, you got $50,000 a month. Now can you make it 5 million a month, right? I mean, so that will be the other challenge. So it will keep evolving, but at the foundational level, a mix of, everything has to evolve. That's why you need a team. You need a team of people who can help you. I mean, your own leadership team and your team that is still working on the product and the regulatory aspects and appeal for market adoption and so on. So this way, you're hitting product milestones, at the same time you're meeting the regulatory requirements and proof points, and still getting some money. So it's somewhat dynamic, but the balance has to be there, and it shifts in favor of one dimension as things change over time.
And for those who want to go into the competition, whether it's Pitch Elk Grove or another one, what would you have liked to know before going into it?
I think you kind of have to I've seen a few startups that have done well, and you got to start. I actually recommend any startup that I initially meet, I tell them to go to 1 Million Cups, Sacramento, and they do a presentation to the community, and that does a couple things. It helps them sort of formalize their company, they kind of crystallize the idea, plus it gets the community introduced. That's usually where I go, but then from there, if they haven't been before, I think going to an accelerator or an incubator will definitely help, because there's just so much. It's just there's all these different things, and if you're trying to raise money, it's its own language, and you almost have to see it from the standpoint of the people who are investing, because they see so many startups, they want to raise money, and you're a little too early, You kind of have to, you kind of need to, bake a little bit more and show some traction before you start, getting money, because, I see a lot of, this is actually what I tell people, there's a spectrum. So there's the idea on one side, and on the other side there's product, customers, revenue. So the closer you are to this side, the better off you are. But if you're an idea here, it's high risk for the investor. But if you're here, where you got product, revenue, customers, it's less risk. So if you just sort of at the idea stage, you could probably raise money from friends and family, and these are people that believe in you. Of course, if you fail, Thanksgiving becomes kind of awkward.
Because of pitch day.
Yeah, but so try to get some traction, and it's actually kind of really hard with medical, because a lot of it's just research first.
It takes a long time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, medical and life science is hard, because it takes a while before you get commercialization. So the people that, you have to find investors that are used to high-risk situations.
Because you've been 5 years, you said?
Yeah.
And how about
I think it's been like 8 years with, probably 8 years with the company total, but with HuMOLYTE specifically as a product, it's probably been more like 5 years.
And so knowing that it takes a long time, have you thought of when do you say, no, it's too long? It is okay for me to stop?
Well, I mean, so when you say it's okay for me to stop,
Meaning
I mean, it's not
spend,
that I'm
like-
throwing in my gloves and that's it, I'm done with it, no. I mean, founder can be successful only if he or she believes in it and takes it till the end. Now, the successful conclusion of that is not that, you know, I'm done with it and fed up, but it's essentially some sort of either a sale or a partnership agreement with someone, at least the least that you would expect, that with all the effort and money that you've taken from others and other stakeholders, there's some responsibility that you have in terms of doing what you can to salvage this and get the maximum monetary value out of that effort. But it's most of the founders and startups, unless there's a reason why either the market has just shifted completely against the, you know, whatever their vision was, but they would pivot at the right time. They'll make adjustments. They'll look at alternate markets. Maybe look at, instead of a product, try to complement with some services, so you can kind of get a mix of that, or maybe some partnerships, something or other to at least get salvage what you have, the effort you put in. I would say. But hopefully no one needs to get to that. But
So it's most startups fail. I mean, and I think, I can think one of my earliest startups, you know, I probably put a lot of time and money in it, and it was pretty much a dog. Like, our target customer weren't interested, and people that were interested in our product thought it was too primitive. And I think after a year, I didn't have one like good sales, so I, you know, shut that down. And part of it was you know how they talk about you need to have passion for it? And part of it, I developed a product for the publishing industry, and I realized I don't like the publishing industry. And so that, you know, I just sort of like, this is a dog, let's kill it, let's just shut it down. But I think if you have passion, then you can think, okay, I gotta make a new version of this, I gotta pivot. And so I've seen a few startups that, you know, their thought was here, but they pivoted because there was a different market that really wanted it. So it's kind of being able to recognize it. But it's also where the passion is, and it's also like, you know, like that example, I don't really care for the publishing industry. This one, you know, HuMOLYTE is, you know, I see the clinical results, and I understand where to be, and I have a personal stake in it because, you know, I have family members that passed from cancer, so it's a different story. Yeah. So I think there is a you know, valid point, you know, when do you stop, and so I guess that's a judgment call. But I've seen some people work on projects that probably should have stopped, and I've seen some people who, you know, just kept at it, and you know, they're the ones that, you know, they make the movies about, you know. Yeah. That, you know, that come out, that somehow become successful. And one of the questions I always, if I'm interviewing people, I always ask them, you know, what is your near-death experience with your company? And it's always interesting to see how they survive their near-death experience. So.
Well, I love that you talk about passion, right, the importance of passion, and you talk about also believing in yourself, right? And then both of you are talking about pivoting. Because I'm sure some people are there too long, and I'm sure there's those who stop too early, right?
Yeah.
So I'm sure there's two extremes. So what are some milestones in the next 6 to 12 months? What are some goals?
well, for us, it's to start commercializing our platform. We got our product registered. Now we can technically start selling once we feel the product is solidified enough, and so that's the next thing. Immediate goal is raise money at the same time as we start commercializing our platform in a cautious way the next 3 months, and then 6 months onwards we start being more aggressive in our commercialization efforts, scaling out, and of course with the money we raise, get our product features out, get clinical evidence, build credibility. So essentially outbound, understand the market, let the market adopt us, and see how things go.
So we finished our human trials, and Dr. Craig just, he finished writing the write-up, and you have to submit it for peer review. And so hopefully, get published in, a journal. And then our hope actually is that we can present it to, there's a couple, it's called a medical food, and that we can present it to them, and we'll either go through an acquisition or licensing deal at that point. If that doesn't happen, then the long road is, I'm starting a company, I gotta, raise money, create product, get distribution, get a sales force. That's the longer journey.
Yeah.
But our hope is, they could see, that with the clinical evidence that they'll see it's a good market, and, then we can go on to the next project. So that's my hope.
Yeah, for sure. And what can we do, if you could tell the world, what can we help you with? For those of us who are here or.
Well, I think this type of gathering really helps all of us. Just listening to Rich got me some ideas, and and also it reinforced some of the decisions I've taken or I'm planning to take. That this is what he has also experienced. So I think those experiential learnings really help each other. I think the other aspect is through this effort. We, personally from my perspective, our startup perspective, since we are focusing our initial controlled launch in the next 3 months in this area, geographic area of Sacramento, I think it helps us build that, I would say, that small community of people. We are reaching out to startups, and there are some startups in the Elk Grove area that we are talking to who have expertise in certain areas of speech therapy, or and so that relationship has evolved. We're looking at reaching out to some hospital centers here, neuro clinics here, so that would be another thing. So just the local mobilization helps, getting the word out helps that we exist and we are here. So I think all of that is kind of difficult to articulate, but it's really, it goes a long way in terms of building our credibility and presence.
Well, if you guys happen to have know someone that's that unfortunately, if you know someone that's going through has cancer and is going through chemotherapy, we'd be happy to provide product just to hopefully that'll alleviate it. We're looking for more. We have their study, but we're looking for more just sort of anecdotal data. So if you know somebody that's going through cancer, I'm happy to send you a product for them to last through chemotherapy, just to get that data point.
And the last question is around self-care. So, building startups is a lot of work, and so what do you do to take care of yourself?
Well, I think it's, first of all, we have you got to have that confidence and trust in yourself that keeps you going and motivated. Having a nice family support system helps. I'm fortunate enough to have a wife and a family who's very supportive. They understand that what we are doing is not easy, and but of course, a startup, a founder's journey is always very difficult for whatever reasons. A lot of reasons are beyond your control, and good or bad, they do impact you. But of course, the other thing is to, of course, have a positive attitude, and every little, for every, you may have 10 setbacks, but one success. And just hang on to that one little success that you have, because that gives you the source of encouragement and optimism and hope. And that is actually what we need. As I said, and you also mentioned that, startups die 1,000 deaths during their lifetime. So you'll see a lot of things go wrong, but one little thing that goes right is possibly the sliver of hope that drives you further. And hang on to it, and that gives you immense energy. And of course, obviously, take care of yourself, your health. If you're not healthy, there's nothing you can do. You cannot participate physically or emotionally in this journey. So all of that, and just stay calm, positive, and focused. And believe in yourself. That's very important. If you know you're on the right track, things will happen. I
feel like you've just given us something for life. right, for like everyday life, like focusing
I
on
don't know, this
positive.
is,
and-
and I'm not that type of a person, by the way, but, I'm not a touchy-feely guy, but
Well,
what I'm
you
saying is
definitely
that's what
touched
it is.
me. The heart.
I don't know, Rich, what do you think?
I was gonna take a lot of illegal drugs, but I'm kidding. Actually, I actually find that I take regular walks, like 10 minutes, 5 minutes out, 5 minutes back, that actually helps rejuvenate me. And the thing I do that I feel really good about is, I actually do volunteer like at 1 Million Cups, and they have these mentor challenges where I'll mentor, and I feel like when I mentor these early stage startups, like, oh my God, I know so much. And so I'll sit there and they'll tell me whatever their startup idea, and I'm able to give them constructive feedback, and I guess that's I actually get joy from that, just helping other people out. So that kind of lifts me up a little bit too.
Thank you. What questions would you like to ask them?
For one thing, congratulations, both of you, for becoming the finalists and winning. And my name is Marin. I wanted to give you a quick background on how we ended up, coming here today. The wife Rahel is interested in starting a private practice clinic, and by my industry nature, by my profession, I've been selling into private practices and physicians pretty much my entire career. And it's rewarding, but it's one of the hardest things to do because, they get bombarded a lot. So, you figure out so many different creative strategies to engage with them. And in doing research for her, like trying to find some resources for network, and I ran into this program through MedStart and Pitch Elk Grove. And while I was doing the research, was particularly, just start doing a little bit more research on EnlitenAI. Because I saw like everyone that was in there. And it's interesting because health tech, especially AI driven, is just exploding right now. But there isn't really that many products out there that focus on as much on neurology or a lot of the other underlying stuff, especially now also with autism, kids on spectrum needing a lot of it. So I think you're tapping into a very unsaturated market that has a lot of potential. Now, a two-part question, and congratulations for being able to get here. So the commercialization, getting to market part, I know how difficult that is because I do it and I live it all the time, and it requires so much, and it's great that you brought a product all the way in here. The question is the business model. Okay, I understand the benefit that it would bring to the patient directly, but how does that correlate with the private practice that you would be partnering in order to provide that? What does the pricing model look like in there? And then number two, what would be a ramp-up period? Especially like early on to get to the market, what would that look like? How fast do you plan to accelerate? And what, like having a sales force, what would be that strategy? What would that look like?
Okay, so great points. We are looking at reimbursement. So we have multiple stakeholders. The neurologist and the physician is the clinician's office is one of the key stakeholders. So the getting into the market, we have a path for commercialization using the codes, the reimbursement codes that already exist. So for example, if a physician were to use a product and recommend the product to the patient, and the physician is getting information and they're taking decisions and they have patient encounters. So whenever there's a patient encounter and we facilitate, we encourage an incremental, I would say, we enable more patient encounters through a monitoring of the patient for the physician. Therefore, there are more opportunities for billing. So from the billing perspective and reimbursement perspective, the physician and the clinician, their staff, they have more opportunities to bill and get reimbursed from the insurance using these codes. Now, is that and of course we get reimbursed using a certain code, that's revenue for us. But is that the most lucrative model for us? No. Value-based model, and I was telling the gentleman over there before the session started, that value-based models are more lucrative, and yet they're challenging, but they are very lucrative for both the neurology center as well as for us. Now what it means, what it entails is that we should be able to successfully and clearly articulate the quality of life measurements improvements, metrics. The health economics and outcome research modeling needs to be done so that we have metrics saying that your seizure burden has come down, quality of life has improved, your the titration cycle has shortened. So there are certain you have fewer hospitalizations. Therefore, you can quantify the cost savings. So as long as we are able to get clinical evidence in 3 to 6 months to show that there is value, monetary value for the insurance and the payers, that you're reducing the hospitalization, getting better health outcomes, improving a lot of other quality of life parameters through a measurement and a couple of metrics, then we can justifiably engage, and that's a case-by-case basis with each neurology center, saying that, you know what, in a given month, in a given year, you typically see, typically a neurology center would see upwards of 6,000 to 12,000 patients with epilepsy every year. So that catchment area, and since we are focusing on each neurology center as a targeted or a named strategic account, and going in there, as you had a comment on account management. So we manage that account as a strategic account, and then we make sure that we are maximizing our footprint through the patient base that they have, that they cover. And that is how we think we can scale.
And you could potentially do both as well, to kind of test the market.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So to start with, we have a model fallback, which is reimbursement. But there could be a better model. And for some neurology center like ACOs, it makes sense. Not for everyone. And we will go to each center and then understand what model works best for them as well as us.
Perfect, but it's completely insurable, that's it.
Yeah, so,
it's perfect.
yeah, we are.
With the FDA, you already have the FDA all.
Yes, but the key thing, starting off on day one, I was very clear on one thing, that I will not have the patients pay a penny. And this is because the patients and the caregivers are already going through hell.
Yeah.
They are dealing with a lot of other challenges and a lot of expenses that you don't even realize that you have to go in, just chronic care, a lot of management of a lot of other things, special needs and wheelchairs and modifying your vehicle to be able to accommodate that. So there's a lot of costs that they have to burden that they already have. We don't want them to bear the cost. So our objective, our business model from day one was very clear. The payer has to pay. Now it makes it more challenging because now dealing with insurance and the reimbursement model is a very difficult thing. But you have to make a product that can address that.
Yeah, and as long as the physician prescribed it.
Exactly.
That's
And luckily, one thing is that when I started off, I'm not a physician, but when we started talking to people outside our organization, it was the physicians, the neurologists. And I was initially very scared of talking to a neurologist. I said, that guy's gonna say, wait a minute, you don't understand this, and you're out. But we've had 100% success rate when we talk to the specialists, and they have actually, a couple of them have said this is like music to our ears, even if you can do 10% of that. So that is not a challenge for us. And the challenging part, as you said, is scaling and the commercialization. Absolutely. Love to talk to you about your expertise and your insights on that space.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Congratulations.
Well, it's one milestone at a time. I mean,
one more.
you never know.
Yeah, absolutely.
But thank you.
Other questions?
When growing your team, especially with the startup ups and downs, what's been the most challenging part about supporting your team, like in the background?
Well, so I've been on startups where we've grown a team. Right now, we are in, at least for HuMOLYTE, we are in cash conservation. So it's just, essentially it's me and the founder, and we have a fractional CFO who, basically does our taxes. But, you know, in the past, when I was working, my last startup, it was acquired, and we grew from 0 to 4 million AR in 2 years. We had to grow a team, and part of it is like, I think what really helps is the mission. So in my last startup, we were helping first responders, and we had a product that actually prevented like 4 suicides with first responders. So I think, you know, having a mission where people can believe in really helps out and makes up for, you know, crappy hours, crappy pay, and I think when you're working with people that join a startup, you realize that they, you know, if they're any good, they would actually work at a company where they could get more money, and here they're choosing to to have a, you know, kind of a crappy, you know, work environment. You know, it's not like a great work environment, and for less pay. But if they see the mission, they get it. Plus, you treat them right. You got to make sure that they feel team, they feel welcomed, they feel like they're appreciated. That makes a big difference.
Yeah, I'd like to add one comment to that. My perspective also is, I agree with all you said, is that sometimes because of the cash conservative mode that you're in, or you just don't have cash, we end up working on equity. And of course the mission and the passion drives it, but only for so long, right? People have bills to pay, and so one challenge that I and other similar founders have is that how do you ensure that you can retain your staff, given the fact that the fundraising cycle has just suddenly, you know, increased and stretched on you. So it is a challenge, but I agree with you. You have to make sure that you compensate them in some like equity and other things, and treat them well, because they're actually doing you a favor as well, working and joining you in the mission. But if things succeed, there's a huge payout for everyone. So that's something we need to balance, but that's a big challenge for founders. How do you retain team members?
How would you say that you get your team to believe in that mission? Like, how do you, I'm trying to find the right words. How do you build that culture in your workplace and in your business?
One, you kind of have to state it, you know, like, so my last company, we built one, we found that so the biggest killer of cops and firefighters is actually suicide. You know, that it's a big problem, you know, and you know, when we were working with some of the first responders, they would tell us stories, and I actually would be in project meetings and would be tearing up. And so when we saw that we were making this impact, that we prevented it, it made up for a lot. So you've got to be able, you know, when you see the successes, kind of broadcast, like, hey, we prevented 4 suicides, or, you know, I was in this meeting and, you know, we have to share those stories internal. And I think that drove a lot of our team to work. I mean, we work really crazy hours, and you know, like, we weren't getting my team members were maybe getting paid better than minimum wage, because we were just recruiting people from fresh out of like college, or, you know, even some high school people with just high school degrees to work with us. But it made a difference when they saw that. It made a difference. And like our product, you know, HuMOLYTE, you know, I mean, right now, for me personally, I've actually seen it work with, you know, this woman had breast cancer, and she did not encounter like the diarrhea, vomiting, or mucositis, and that really goes away. Like, oh my God, we're really making a difference. So if you have successes, then you got to broadcast it too. I think that helps solidify it.
Thank you. Congratulations as well.
Thank you.
Well, quick question, just because one thing I find with a lot of business owners is like the passion's there, the drive is there, the know-how often, that's like the area that people are growing the most, especially when it comes to the numbers and finance. A lot of times I find people get that first introduction when they're looking for funding, and sometimes they're like, hey, have you done X, Y, and Z? And they're like, what is that? Was there almost like, was there a particular point, especially in the searching for funding phase where you're like, hey, I think this is like a pretty big point that we have to really lean into, or like, what stage in business were you guys? Was it like a couple of years in? Was it more recent? Like, I'd love to just learn more about that timeline, because I find it's a little unique for everybody. Some people, they start raising very early. I like that spectrum you said, where it's like idea all the way to revenue, product, customers. Some people can start from day one thinking that. Some people realize like 90% the way there, oh shoot, I need to do X, Y, and Z. Learn more about you guys' experience.
Yeah, so we started in the first year, we were kind of managing our own expenses and, you know, balance sheets, and so that sort of thing. The first year we did it on our own. And then we realized that as we are growing in terms of getting more and more partners, and there was more cash coming in and going out in different ways. So we had a part-time CPA kind of help us, chartered accountant, and even right now that person is helping us and make the sheets. So as we prepare ourselves for investor readiness.
Yeah.
Now, once we get to that point and we get funding, let's say I get $5 million funding, right? Then things will be different. We got a lot more money to manage. Now we want to make sure that we are optimally using it in the right way, and this should give us, stay with us for the runway that we have planned, which is like, like a 18-month or 2-year, whatever. So then comes the point at which we would definitely need someone more serious. So I think it's evolution, at least for the stage that we are in. Gradually we evolve and become more mature with new expertise.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, that's, no,
You know, I said Dr. Craig, by the time I joined, he'd actually already raised like $1 million, and from, being a doctor, he knew other doctors. And actually, if you happen to be in medicine and you happen to know other doctors, I kind of saw the salaries of how much they make, like, wow,
Yeah.
you should make friends with lots of doctors. So he raised a lot of money through other doctors, and by the time I joined, I invested some money in it too, because I saw the value. I kind of brought my wife into it, and that's actually how we funded the offshore study. So it's something you have to, I talk to people, like, ideally, if you don't need investors and you can just do it yourself and bootstrap, that's the way to go.
Yeah.
Once you start getting investor money, your life gets a lot more complicated.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
any questions? All right, you want to wrap it up?
Yes, so thank you so much.
thank you.